Um, Thank you all for being here this morning. Again, if you didn't hear, my name is Erin Larkins. I'm with a work-based learning coordinator with Mount Diablo Unified, and Shirley Hernandez is also with us today. She's also a work-based learning coordinator with Mount Diablo Unified. We're super excited to have guest speaker today. We have Marco Contreras from, he's a creative director for Meadow Design, Inc. He's going to go ahead and explain what he does in his role. As a quick reminder, students, you cannot unmute yourselves, but please utilize the chat function for questions, comments, feedback for our speaker if he asks questions. And we are going to take it from here. So Marco, go ahead and take the floor. Students, please put your view in speaker view so that we can see what Marco is talking about and see his face. So the floor is yours, sir.
Well, thank you so much. My name is Marco Contreras, and I'm creative director and co-founder of Meadow Design in San Francisco. We are a branding and branding design agency. We've been doing this for already almost 20 years. And I want to talk today a little bit about graphic design and that career path. And I think first I want to do is just give you a little background about me, so that just to kind of, so you can understand where I kind of come from, just in, and I don't know if there's any similar paths to me or challenges, but I do want to talk a little bit. I'm born of immigrant parent from Mexico, so si hablo español muy bien. And let's see, I think that for me growing up, there was definitely some challenges, and just in terms of the education part, just I think that loving parents, little bit challenging for helping me with academics, I think, but I think that one thing that they've helped me is to continually to be persistent and working hard through schooling, even through challenging times when, my academics were very difficult. But I think the one thing I learned early on is that I had a really good love for art and design. And as a result, was able to continue to work, not only just through the art part of it, but, understanding that the rest of the education part I had to continue to work through. Upon graduating high school, I went to University of Arizona and studied graphic design, which I had a good love for. It's very difficult to get through school still. I think that I found that the love of doing it actually helped me get through a lot more, because I wanted to do it more, because I wanted to work at it a lot harder. I found myself, excelling in class and with peers, and as a result of graduating, I started applying to other schools, or not other schools, but other jobs. After graduating, I took an internship at Wired magazine as a designer. I was there for a little while, and then from there, that helped launch my career to going to different design agencies. The Bay Area is very big for graphic design. Even I know a lot of people are working remote, as myself. Our office is in the city, but I'm actually been at home and only come in once a month. So working in the design agencies around the city in San Francisco and the Bay Area, there's just so many opportunities and different types of work out there. I worked at different graphic design agencies. And then eventually ended up landing at one company where it during this, which most of you, I don't know if you were probably not around, but it was called the .com bust. The agency I was at folded, and then me and another partner decided to form our own company, and that was 20 years ago, I guess. So that's probably good. I'm probably sure all of you probably weren't around during that time. So as a result, we continued on doing this, the work. And then most of our focus is on technology clients, retail, and food and beverage. And I'll show some examples about it. Another thing too is I'm also an educator also. So I've actually taught at the University of Santa Cruz for about 7 to 8 years. So I help write curriculums there. I go and talk to other high schools. I talk to San Jose State, and just do a little bit of, help encouraging students and helping them get through, and just asking questions about graphic design or even just related fields to it. So, and then so at the end of this presentation, I'll take questions if that's, and just kind of talk a little bit about, and you guys can ask me about some other career paths. But I'll kind of show you a little bit about graphic design. I'll just tell you a little bit about graphic design. So graphic design is pretty much everywhere around you, and it's almost sometimes you don't really think about it. But if you go to the mall, you go in any packaging that you get from a shoebox, whether it's clothing, whether it's a cereal box or anything, there's a graphic designer had to put it together. So they use the design tools to, and then I mean, no matter where you go, everything, every logo, everything was done by a graphic designer. It's pretty much embedded into our world. No matter where, every typography, every billboard was done by some type of graphic designer. Now there are different levels of it. There are, anywhere from, somebody, large agencies who do like branding for like FedEx, which is like, if you've seen that FedEx box, that logo and everything that comes around, or even the Amazon or anything, some graphic designer, at least there are teams, had to put that together. So it can be a really rewarding career, because you get to learn a lot of different things depending on which type of work you go into. I'll share I'll share some work and just kind of walk you guys through a little bit. So I'm going to share three different, we have three different brand books, which basically talks about, which has our different kinds of design that we do. Let's see. Let's share here. Can everyone see my screen? I hope so. Just nod at least. Okay, so one of the things we'd focused on too is that from our last company I was in, we continued on with, we were very focused on technology. So kind of want to show you a little bit like what we do. And so we're a full branding design agency, which means that we will design the identity for a company, the logos that you guys see, websites, all the brand collateral, which is like business cards, any data sheets, iconography, mobile apps, all the UI. And part of this goes, what we do is go in collaboration with the client, figuring out what their product is, and then help navigate them to match what they're having to offer. A lot of times what happens in graphic design could be is that somebody has a great idea and then they can't really express like how to match that idea. So that's where we come in quite a bit, is that people say, hey, we have a new product, we have something cool and great, we want to push out to public and for sales, but they'll have a terrible brand or a logo, and I'm sure people have seen really bad design and stuff that doesn't look good. So our job is to try to help elevate that, and through that we do research, like on competitors, also to figure out like what would be something different that could make the company stand out. So this is a company, Quadric. They do edge technology, which I won't go into too much to it, but it's basically it's quick reaction quick reaction hardware, which basically is any of those new cars that are out there that automated cars that don't have any drivers. They have to react to things on the street when they would, like, say if somebody goes out. So the company asked us that, like, what can you do that looks cutting edge? Here's something like that we had come up with an idea. And it's not usually a lot of our process goes through, it's rounds of iterations. So we do the research, come up with different design directions, and then basically go through to a final design. And then we deploy it out. So, and I'll walk through a couple. These are technology. This is Tiger Graph, which is another company that basically what they do, they're basically graph database. So when you're understanding information, like they can actually pull all the information together and into a graph. Like basically, it's show connection between different parameters. Like for example, like let's just say like Nike is figuring out who's buying, which demographic is buying their shoes, which brand. They can actually pull. It's for them. They can use the software to pull together. And in our design here, we have these bubbles that basically help. These are basic bubbles of data to pull together. Another project here. And I'll show like 3 projects in each, just because otherwise it gets pretty long and pretty lengthy. This is a security software. It's basically AI to basically help detect security threats. I mean, there's the branding part of this, like it's the chip itself is what's actually the intelligent part of it that helps detect. And so there's, like in terms of branding and stuff, like we use the colors red to help for alerts. There's also the wireframe technology, which basically shows like schematics, and that kind of all ties into the design. All right, I'm gonna move over to some of the retail projects here, just so. Let's go through, well, this is Marmot. So let me get to some work from Old Navy. So this is one of the more fun projects we've had. So Old Navy would approach us to say, hey, we want you to design our fall look. And this is something where we get a chance to learn about what they're doing for the fall. It's actually pretty amazing. You walk into their building, and then they have mock stores inside of Old Navy. So every time you've gone into an Old Navy, like that, those are actually very similar setups that they have inside of their own building. And what they have is when you walk onto their internal floor inside of the building, it's a complete walkthrough mock-up of what their stores are kind of like outside. And so our job as creatives is to come up with like, here's the clothing that the designers, the fashion designers say, here's what we're doing for the next season, which is fall, spring, summer. And we want you to come up with a look that kind of match it. And part of our job is to say, okay, cool. Like we get to do like packaging design for them. Like this is what going to be the taglines that are coming up. What are some iconography? So a lot of times you see a lot of the graphics that show up in the store, like this is what we'll do, and then we give it over to them and they take over and then deploy it out. Let me see if I can find, this is a project there's a guy named Rob Deerdeck. He has a show called Ridiculousness. I don't know if you guys heard it, but he's also a pretty big entrepreneur. He approached us, same thing, like, hey, I'm launching a bunch of products. I want a modern design for like sunblock. So he had approached us and said, we want something really cool, minimalist. And this is something like, same thing through ideation, we came up with a bunch of different. And so part of our job is to create the whole brand look and feel of everything. So how photos look, how colors work together, and that's part of branding. And so you don't necessarily always just sometimes you can just do a logo, but a lot of times people come to our company for the full brand. And what that does is basically gives life to any company. When you walk into like Old Navy or any Nike store, there's a whole feel that is created when you walk in, and that's actually by design. Like the look and the feeling that you get when you walk into certain stores, that's actually by design. People have figured out like what are the colors, what are the what is the language that's being used, what's the demographic, who's coming into the store. Like that's actually all been thought of. And while it may seem invisible, you walk in and don't think about it, but somebody has actually thought about that so they can actually attract the right demographic. And then I'm going to go, let's see if there's any other ones in here. I'm going to talk about the food and beverage also, or wine and spirits. So part of our other work is that we actually do a lot of wine labels also too, which is really, it's fun to do. We get to do creative, we get to do illustration. So somebody will come up to us and say, hey, we have a new wine that's coming out. We need a label to match the idea. And it's a very similar process in that we will do the research, what's the demographic, who's the buyer on this, and then we try to match that creative to what they're doing. So I'll walk through a couple of these. And each one of these have their own demographic and feel. We also do, and then there's also we also do bottling design also too. So let's So I'm talking a little bit about, so that's kind of some of the work we do. I'll take some questions afterwards a little bit about if you guys are interested in knowing more about this thing, but I also want to talk about a little bit about what the job entails, like what my day to day is. Um, it took a lot of work to get where I'm at. I mean, there's definitely a lot of hours, and it does take, I mean, a good amount of research and reading and understanding and coming up with ideas. I think that one of the things about being a graphic designer um, is that it's basically an artist in the business world. It's kind of how I look at it. And as a creative, the way you grow is you have to try to work to feed yourself different things, whether it's listening to music, whether you're a writer or anything else. You know, there's a bunch of different things you can do to help your creativity to grow. And those are all things you bring back into the job itself. So stuff like, you know, lettering and which is the right one, those all kind of help with the different types of thing as a creative that you nurture yourself. Now, as when you get into the job place, I want to talk a little bit about the different types of jobs in graphic design. So there's a good amount, but the three main ones are you can either work for a graphic design agency, which is like what we have, where you get to do a lot of different types of projects. You have different types of clients. There is also the in-house design teams, which are a little bit different. So you could, let's just say you work for, you know, Salesforce or Facebook or Twitter. They actually have their own internal teams that basically just completely support their own company. And then there's also the ad agency, which is a little bit different, which is basically you are paired with copywriters, and a lot of your design revolves around doing advertising. So you're doing promotional pieces, you're doing anything that you see in a magazine or you see sometimes online, those are actually done through ad agencies. And those are the three main graphic design careers. Each of them are, you know, rewarding. I think that one of the other things too has been great is just your peer-to-peer, although right now we're in COVID, so it's normally I would be talking to you in person. But it's still, I think that that's one of the things that you learn from being around other creatives. And I think it can be a very thriving environment. I want to talk a little bit also about just like the different levels of graphic design. Like a lot of times most of the time you start out as an intern somewhere after you graduate from school. I do encourage most people, if they do study graphic design, to attend a school. You can do graphic design on your own. It's not necessarily you know, you need a certain degree for sure to get a job, like as you are an architect or where you're required to have a license. But I think that the one beneficial of going to school is learning from professors and peers that will actually help you drive you into the workforce. I have seen very, very few people. So I think the importance of education is really, really key on helping you continue on to this. I think it also helps open up the world too. And I think that, you know, I felt very lucky to find graphic design pretty early on. And I do want to encourage other people to know that there's just a good number of different types of works out there that you could interest you, especially in the arts. There's other types. I mean, you can work for film industry, you can work for video game companies. So there's different types of jobs within, and each one of those still have a very creative background. I think a lot of the schooling and the basic principles from even friends who work in video games design and even maybe even just strictly mobile app design, a lot of them actually continue to all have creative backgrounds. So even some of my friends who are illustrators have also continued to have that basic schooling. So I strongly encourage that if you do, and there are a number of schools out there, and you don't have to attend the best school. I mean, or at least the most expensive school. I wouldn't say the best school, but the most expensive school to get a good graphic design degree. So, okay, I think I talked pretty fast here. Should I take some questions a little bit? I can also talk about, I mean, maybe some of the, information about navigating through, like, you know, actually, I'm sorry, I was going to go back to a little bit about my day to day. So I'll talk a little bit about that. Most of my day consists of, so we have a few teams. There's about 15 of us, and we have some developer teams that, so it starts out about probably about 6 in the morning where I'm getting messages. And not to say that you have to be up in the morning and get ready to go, but a lot of times messages start coming in from clients around 6 in the morning, and generally we work from 9 to 6 as our general working hours, and so we can usually start responding around 9. But our day-to-day job is that my day-to-day job is interacting with the clients directly, and what they'll usually initiate is we have ongoing projects. Like we from the ongoing projects, they will give us a design brief of what they want to do, or if it's a new project, they'll give us a design brief. Here's the project. After we've signed it, we want you to create an identity for our company, and we want you to create a website for our company, and we want you to create some packaging, or sometimes all 3 of those items. And so in the day-to-day job, we'll go through that. We'll go through the new jobs, like our new projects that we're starting up. And then we will also have jobs that are in progress. So usually I check in myself and help direct my team to what they need to do creatively. So that's my job. Is before, when I was designer, I was taking directions from my creative directors. Now I'm in a little bit different role where I'm giving directions to my team about where they need to explore. And so what it also does for them, it helps me mentor them to become better creatives, because I can help them with my experience to look to different places if they're, sometimes they get stumped on ideas. They don't know where to, like, I'm kind of stuck on this idea. Can you help me? So I'm able to help them and guide them. And sometimes they're like, we don't understand this project, can you? And then that's where my job is to come in and give them guidance about what direction to go into. Also, part of my job is, managing people too. So that is, there's other parts to that too, which is I have to manage personalities. I have to manage people having personal, problems, and you have to be just very caring. I think that our work environment definitely is very open. So in terms of, like, we give people a lot of space, in terms of there's not a somebody overlooking at and everyone knows that they're responsible for their deadlines, which means that that's when marker points are for projects. So throughout my day, I'm basically guiding the creative, guiding the development teams, development meaning the coding teams, to help which projects they're working on. I'm helping the copywriters also to shape, what the language is going to be on something. Let me get off of sharing this part so I can get back onto me. So let's see here.
Hey, Marco, can I ask a question? I'm going to jump the line here for my students.
That's
my name
okay.
is Madison Villars. I'm the teacher. Thank you so much for coming to our class. One thing that I just heard you say that I thought was really interesting is that you give your staff a lot of autonomy.
Yes.
And I think that is like a really important thing to have in a workplace. And I'd really like to hear how you tell if somebody is a good fit for them, because I know a lot of our students, especially, if a virus is kind of hanging around, are going to need to learn the skill of coming to a job and getting it done kind of autonomously. And that's something I hear a lot in Silicon Valley. So can you tell us a little bit about what that is, and like kind of how you know if somebody's a good match for you?
Well, okay, so in graphic design, there's actually 3 different levels. And I'll talk a little bit about, like, I've hired a lot of people and I've had to let go of a few people. So there is, so when you're interviewing for a place, even just initially, it's actually a 2-way street. You have to make sure that it's good for you also. It's kind of like, I equate it to almost like dating, it's like, it has to go both ways. It has to be a good fit for you. if somebody, I can tell when somebody just wants to get a job and is not really interested in our company necessarily. I find that not to be the best fit sometimes. And we've hired people, sometimes it seemed to be a good fit, but it wasn't. But I mean, we've had some people that have been with us for like almost 10 years, which has been great. And in graphic design, that's quite a long time. I'll answer the questions too. I see a bunch of them in the chat, but I think that you have to, in our particular thing, there's the fit, there is the personality is the first and most important thing that somebody will look at when you first come into a job. No matter what interview you do, you will, the first thing they're going to just identify is, can you fit in with our company as a person, not even about your abilities at that point. So it's important to be yourself, that's for one, and not try to be somebody that you're not, because it'll come out. And so sometimes there's challenges because you really might want to work at a place, but then you might interview with somebody that's not, maybe not the most friendly, unfortunately. So, so I think that it's definitely important to be yourself. In our particular job, we look for, the other additional thing is that we look at their creative work. So their portfolio has to kind of match closely to what we're doing. So we get people who apply that, their work doesn't look like our work. And those things are matched by like types of colors, type of typography, projects, perhaps. And so we want to have somebody that kind of, like if you have the circle of here's our company, you kind of want to have their circle intersect with what we're doing a little bit. So it's like they can bring something else to the board, and then we have like part of them is what's matching with us. So those, if we can kind of meet those three things, and I think a lot of things is like, it's important to be a team player. I think especially in graphic design, I've had a few people interview and, I just like to work alone, nobody bother me. I'm like, well, we're in a team environment, and in our industry, it's about building ideas. So what makes graphic design successful a lot of times in a team is that one person comes up with an idea, another person, hey, I got it. How can we build on top of that? So you want to keep going up and up and up on ideas till you get to the right point. So those are the kind of things that actually help in a team environment. And some people like to see that ideation. I think the other thing too is there tends to be sometimes with graphic design a little bit of ego, just this artist mentality of it. Everybody that we make sure that that's not something that we bring into our agency, because it doesn't really work with us in our environment. We try to be very supportive of each other and look at it as the end team. And I, as the person who hires everybody, recognize that, even if somebody's ideas didn't make the final presentation, I recognize that their idea helped build the other ideas. So they definitely, I take note of that credit. So that they've actually said, hey, their idea helped support to come up with another idea. So it's basically a building process. And I think that that's when the design is the strongest. So.
Mark, I just wanted to ask real quickly, did you want me to read up the questions and then you answer them?
I can see them here.
Okay.
I can only look through them here. I sent you quite a few here. Okay, I'll start with the first one here. Please share with us the type of software you use to design work. We pretty much predominantly use Adobe products, which is basically Illustrator, InDesign, Dreamweaver, Premiere, After Effects, and that's mainly for the graphics part of things. And then for development, there's other stuff. We use Sketch, which is another one that's helped for UI. And so that's the other software that we use, and that's pretty helpful for wireframing. And what I mean wireframing is that when you are doing mobile apps and doing websites, you have to build out the wireframe of where content's going to be, and that's Sketch works really well for that. Photoshop, let's see, it also says here, what software did they learn? What software, who takes the photos? Oh, so the photography is actually hired out as part of our like extended arm. So a lot of times when photography comes into a bigger project, we actually will, us or the client will hire out photography. So photographers will go out and shoot what we need them to, but we still help direct what that's going to be. and a lot of times we'll mock up storyboard or positioning in terms of where, so if it's an advertisement, the interesting thing, if you ever look at a photo of an advertising, and people constantly do this, we can tell an amateur from somebody who's been doing it a bit longer, is that when you take a photo of an advertisement, if you take the words out, you'll just have the person and you'll have a bunch of space. So next time you see some kind of billboard, you can look at that and that's how the photo was taken, and that's what somebody who knows that where to position that. The Saul Bass, do I like Saul Bass? Yes, I do. Definitely awesome designer. So yes, there are a bunch of Paul Rand. I mean, there's also modern designers too. And there are people who have shepherded even the Bay Area people. Sam Schmidt from San Jose State was a pretty popular person. And that's somebody who's helped shape a lot of the people here in. There's some few people from Cal Poly. So those are some local area. Let's see. What question? What question would I give my younger self? I think one of the, what advice I would give myself as a younger thing is I think to continue, not to be discouraged, I think, about when you don't land a job or don't hear back. I think that's one thing I would say that I found myself, that I've been into interviews that just, when I was starting out, that just didn't go that great. Like I had an interview at a place where I really liked their design. I thought it was a pretty good fit. But the person I was interviewing was not very kind. When you looked at my work, he kind of said some comments, and I don't know if he said them just to stir me up to see how I would react. And I think the one thing you can do is just try to stay calm and just stay positive about it. After the interview, I was a little bit discouraged, I thought, just because I felt really bad about going into it, and I just felt like I had done something wrong. But what ended up happening is that I ended up getting hired for that job later on, and he was just saying, like, I was just kind of testing to see a little bit of your personality, and sorry if he apologized for, and I don't know if he was having more of a bad day, but it actually, staying calm was one thing, and I would say just, but I still worried too much about it, I think, when I didn't get a job, or, it seemed like it was the right job. And so I think you just have to I would tell myself, my younger self, is just try not to be discouraged when you don't hear back necessarily right away. You'd be surprised that sometimes people, that particular job I got 6 months later. So they actually called me back later on. And I was already discouraged for a while about that. So.
And Marco, I just want to mention to our students, that's a really excellent point, you guys. So jobs do not always call you back. And a lot of times in our today's society, people get angry, right? So they're going to go on and maybe on Yelp or something and smack talk that company, only to know that the guy had a plan and he was going to call him later. So make sure you guys are thinking through your reactions to things before you do something. Yeah. Okay, so please hear that. That's a really important point.
Yeah, I think just no matter what, I think the other thing too, in that interview, any interview that you go into, you might be nervous. And people recognize that. I have people come in all the time, people that we've hired in the past, and they're nervous in their interview. And I try to make them feel relaxed. And, I have to also just see if they're the right person for the job that fits our agency. But in the times of the places I've been into, just continue to just try not to be positive, be yourself. That's really important also, because people do recognize that, and they're still looking to see if your personality, if you're a negative person, it makes it more difficult. So just try to stay more upbeat about it. And I would even tell myself that, because, I just, like, there was a series when I was looking for jobs in the beginning, even after my internship, which opened up a lot of pathways. And it was kind of discouraging, like 1, 2, 3, I didn't get a job, like in a row. And, I had to but I still wanted to keep looking, and you have to just keep working at that networking. I think what Allison said is just basically, don't burn bridges is another thing. So just keep, just don't say anything bad about, about other companies. it's not a good, it's a small world, you know, whatever field you're in, it's a small world. You'd be surprised. It just comes back around. You know, if you had a bad experience with somebody, you know, just say, that's fine. That's who they were. You know, I'm going to continue to stay positive. Demographic is. So a little bit about demographic. When you're talking about that, yes, like depending on the amount of product, depending on the product itself, we actually do a breakdown of who's actually the buyer. And I think that everything goes into it, like, I mean, gender, money. I mean, we did a bottle called Vin Parfait, and it was geared towards, I mean, it was Treasury Wine Estates, who owns a number of wineries. And they gave us, I mean, they did the research for us. I think that one thing is that they actually provide the exact demographic of who we're trying to hit. And they actually even break it down to what are those elements that they're actually going to try to hit. Like, what are the breakdown of even the graphic, the colors and everything. And so with that in mind, that's how we're able to design around it. Because a lot of times if you're not hitting the right audience, then you basically will have failed to communicate to reach that particular demographic. What are the demographics for the whiskey bottles? Well, actually, it's interesting. The whiskey bottles are
I'm
actually.
sorry, Marco, I apologize. I was just telling my student, that's me, Allison Villars, and I
sorry.
was telling my students, you are not the demographic for the wine bottle or the whiskey bottle. That is not designed for you to be attracted to.
Sorry.
No, but I was just sort of joking and saying, like, you know, this is not for you, like the Forever 21 stuff, or maybe the cool cutting design.
Yeah, I know it's sorry, I didn't mean to.
I'm
no, and I don't encourage that. Okay.
Yeah. I was just making a point, like, hey guys,
Okay.
It's not supposed to attract you. Look away.
Right. It's part of graphic design, though. So we so there is quite a pretty big industry in the Bay Area. So,
absolutely.
Do I personally design logos? Yes, I do actually. So I still do sketches down to what the direction of the design is. A lot of times my job will be is just sketching out the concepts and then providing it to the designers, and then the designers will execute. And a lot of times the designers will still also come up with their own ideas. I think that's my personal thing is that I've come from a very strong logo design background. So from the school I went to, so that actually is helpful for my team. And not every school that our designers come from have strong logo backgrounds. What is the best? Let's see. What do you enjoy most about your job? I actually love the education part of it. I love to learn all the different things that people do. I love seeing the brands come to life, like they actually become their own entity. So I think that there was nothing there before, just an idea or a concept, and I love to see them come together. Like I love to see how something takes life through visualization, and then you see these, you know, different types of projects come together. But I also like one of which I didn't show in here, but one of our also we do a lot of nonprofit work. So we do a lot of work for Cliff Bar, for their nonprofit organizations. They have a few different ones. So it's fun to see how they actually come to life, just from an idea that they had. What is the best project you ever worked on? That's a tough one. I don't know. That's a hard one because there's quite a few projects we've worked on, but I think a couple of the ones that we've enjoyed quite a bit. The work we did for Old Navy has been really great. The work we did for Cliff Bar is another rewarding project. I find the ones that if they can involve some type of philanthropy of some kind, those tend to be the most. And the ones where the client is happy and we're also happy about how the project ended up. This is another one. Is it stressful? It can be, for sure. The job is, I mean, we also have to deal, part of our job is we have to deal with our own team, but we have to deal with clients, and clients aren't always, you know, the most what's the word? Personable people, I guess. Sometimes it's not always, every client is different. So depending on the industry. And so we have to deal sometimes with a lot of personalities. So I think that that can sometimes make it difficult. I would say that's probably one of the more stressful parts of the job. Let's see, what do you enjoy most about your job? I think I explained a little bit about that. It was just basically like, um, same thing I was talking about, just doing the creative and helping. Actually, mentoring also has been I've been a really great part of my job. Let's see, how do I define success? Well, I mean, I think for the joy you get out of doing a project, I think for me that's successful, and seeing the client. The job pays well enough. I mean, I'm not like, Elon Musk or anything like that, in terms of like, but we make a good living. We pay our designers pretty well and our developers enough to live in the Bay Area. So that's been really rewarding. Even though I know it can be a difficult place, but I think that's, for me, that's the most important part, is exercising that creativity. And that's what kind of makes the success part of it for us. So, and I think the mentorship has been pretty important for me. So, what impresses you most when you consider hiring someone? I think first thing is definitely personality. Um, I think that having an upbeat, you know, and wanting to connect with people and wanting to see, and excited about what we're doing, I think is definitely what's the first thing I look at when I'm looking to hire somebody. I think that if that doesn't get passed, then it's very difficult to consider that as a candidate. What do I wish I knew? Here's another question. What was one thing you wish you knew when you were in high school? Um, I wish I knew more about graphic design. I wish I knew that there was a bigger world out there. And I think that I've encouraged other high school students too, is that it's to explore all the different opportunities of different types of jobs. And this is the kind of the one key point, is that everyone's going to have, their own life challenges. I think, it's not always going to be easy to work through, but I think that if you find something that you like, you're going to work harder at it. So I think that for me, I learned early that I like creative and I like, graphics, arts in some ways. And I didn't quite understand how it worked into graphic design as a high schooler, but I know that I liked some element of it. So when I actually came upon it in college, I found myself working harder at it because number one, I love the labor of it. And so I found myself, excelling in ways I didn't even like. I wasn't even sure that I was like, oh wow, like I've worked on this already for so many hours and I'm still enjoying it. So I think that's, I think I wish I knew that in high school, that there was actually, and then it made me think more about also too, that there are just so many other types of jobs out there. I mean, it doesn't have to be graphic design or, but in the media arts, there's game design, there's just so many other things, photography, there's fine art. Those are all the different things. There's development, that goes along, and there's such a number of things out there. And I think if you can discover those, and if there's something in those that you enjoy, you'll find yourself working harder at it, as opposed to like, this job is just kind of monotonous a little bit or anything like that. But I found it's very helpful to, if you definitely enjoy it. So I think that just one real quick thing on that, and just also too in a job, and for our teams, I think for me it's important that they have a good working environment, that they feel comfortable in terms of they like the people they work with, and also enjoy the job. Because you can like the people you work with and maybe not enjoy the job, or you can enjoy the job and not like the people you work with. So that sometimes kind of happens, and that's pretty much any place. But I think that I notice that people do, our employees and teams will do better when they actually enjoy the environment and like the people they work with and the work they do. So Do we have internships? Not at the moment right now because of COVID. So we do take on internships. It generally is only at the graduate level just because a lot of the work tends to be, we don't necessarily have internship programs right now for high schoolers. Just because they need to have a lot more knowledge about graphic design in the working area. But we do take them on, and a lot of times the requirement is just knowing the pretty basics of graphic design. I actually like to we have an internship program where we actually work with students to find out what they want to do within graphic design. So not always, I like to talk to them about which part of the job they want to learn with. And so you hear these stories about, oh, go organize the books or go clean the coffee pot. And that's not something we like to do. We actually like to make sure and that they're learning about the job, and they can ask questions anytime. They can sit in on meetings to learn and just basically shadow what we're doing to understand how things kind of work. It takes a little bit of practice. And I think that here's one thing I would encourage is that if you do decide to go into graphic design is to, step forward with ideas, don't just, sit in the background. I think that sometimes I've noticed that sometimes interns have just kind of just sat in the background, and they're kind of just they're too afraid to step out and just say, just to look around to see what's present ideas. I think that we like to see that. So let's see. If you weren't in this career, what would you have been interested in? I probably would have been a musician. So I probably would have been a full-time. When I was in college, I played in a band that did pretty well. So I played in an all-live hip hop band, which is play drums. And I left for one semester just to go tour. So it's a very difficult career path if you want to make it as a musician. In terms of making it in a band, it's just so rare. But had some pretty good. I was making a living enough that was basically making a pretty good living, and had some good producers and that kind of thing, and played some big shows. Opening up for Run DMC and like some of these old school. So that I would probably have done that actually. It's very difficult. It didn't quite work out, and the band didn't work out, so that was okay. So, but I'm glad I'm doing what I'm doing. So I think something I didn't expect to encounter in my career path. I didn't realize how the connections work at first. I think that making connections with other peers and companies, I think I didn't understand how that actually would affect us later. What ends up happening is a lot of the people that I worked with in other agencies ended up starting their own agencies, or ended up starting different companies or working in-house. So I didn't understand that all those connections actually help our company and help other people's companies. So that's something I didn't quite expect. I have a group of friends that were all started at some place or worked at some agency, and mostly everybody now is either either a creative director or leads a team or anything like that. And it's weird because I still look at all of us and I still remember we're all junior designers and interns. So, and I think that now that we're mentoring other people, before we're mentored, I think that, we have people that have gone back and forth between agencies.
I think that was going to be our last questions. Thank you so much, Marcos, on behalf of MDUSD, Ms. Villars, and students. We appreciate your time so much. And I think it's really important for these students to hear different industries, different jobs that are out there that aren't the mainstream that we're taught growing up. So thank you so much. Muchas gracias.
Absolutely.
Marco, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure to meet you. And I did look on your website for a way to contact you. I don't want to bombard your contact box.
Yeah.
But if it's okay with you, can we have your email address? Because we would like to send you a polite thank you for having.
Yes. Can I send it to you an email or?
Sure, I'll put it at my email address in here, and you can also get it from Hannah, who
Okay.
set this up with us. But thank you so much. So
Okay.
I'm going to stop.
okay, you guys.